Welcome to the Stewart Squared Stewart Squared podcast. We've got both Stewarts, and we've got Nolan Bushnell, and we've got Brent Bushnell. We're going to do a deep dive into both the history, but also the current of where AI is now. To catch everyone up, we've been doing a little background. I got my ESP32. I've now hooked it up Bluetooth to my Raspberry Pi. Just went out and got a multimeter today to become an electrical engineer or electrocute myself, one of the two. And yeah, let's start with unless Dad, do you have a question? Do you have something you want to break us in with?
Well, I just want to make sure that Brent is in second spot behind his dad, because we already did a whole episode with Brent, and so we got a pretty good idea of him. We need to let Nolan shine here. But I was just asking questions. So Nolan has been around even longer than I have. I first met him after Atari, and he was the founder of Atari. And before that, and I'm trying to figure out, given this hardware bent, not Brent bent, how did Nolan become an entrepreneur after getting a double E at the University of Utah? You can kind of take us back.
I was actually became an entrepreneur when I was 8, and it came out with my mother saying that we had grown too many strawberries, and me going to the grocery store and seeing that they had strawberries for sale for 50 cents a basket. So I went out and I picked up all the strawberries and put them in baskets and sold them door to door. And in less than an hour, I had made $8.50. And that was in a world where my allowance was 25 cents a week. And so I decided that entrepreneurship was really the way to go. And I kind of never looked back. But I went from there to, and I tell this story a little bit because I started a thing called the Campus Company, which was the student blotter, calendar of events in the middle, sold advertising around the edge. The economics were very simple. I sold $3,000 worth of ads, cost me $500 to print, and I'd give it away at the beginning of a school year. And I did that for the 3 universities. And what that led to was my working at Lagoon, because I was making a lot of money. But the worst thing the problem I always had is I could spend it faster than I could make it. So I decided to get a fun job at the amusement park that really kept me out of harm's way. And the amusement park was sort of my MBA, because they made me manager after a while. And so I had 150 kids working for me, training, managing, learning, how to manage cash flow, manage profit margins, everything. But I had an arcade, and so I understood the economics of the coin-operated game business. Then I graduated from the University of Utah. But while at the University of Utah, I saw a game called Space War that was played on the $1 million computer, and it had been programmed by Steve Russell out of MIT. And I just knew that if I put a coin slot next to that monitor, that it'd make money. But then you divide $1 million computer into 25 cents for 3 minutes, and the math doesn't work. But I filed it away, went to work for Ampex. Now that's another happy accident. And the happy accident was that I got the job because they offered me the highest starting salary, but it was also in it was the video file division. And there I learned how to create little circuits that would drive video monitors.
And Dad, going from University of Utah to Silicon Valley, was Ampex in Silicon Valley? Did you know you want to go to Silicon Valley, or was Ampex being in Silicon Valley what brought you there?
No, I wanted to go to Silicon Valley. And in fact, I tell people today that whenever there's a change agent you need to be next to the king. And in those days, silicon was the king. And so I decided I wanted to be next to the king, being silicon. Today, AI is the king. So I think that people, how do you get next to AI? You learn everything about it. You use it. You invent with it. As you don't know what's on the other side of a change agent. That's kind of the definition of a singularity.
Yeah.
And so
at
that was
some
kind of,
level, you'd have to be in San Francisco, not Silicon Valley, because OpenAI and the other big AI companies are all in the city.
yeah, that would be a hard, I feel last time we went to San Francisco, I felt the wheels were kind of coming off it. But
So no, I agree with you. And actually, with AI, there is now the Kimi model. The Kimi model just came out, and that's an open source model from China. So
right.
I don't think the geographic matters as much as it did in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. So Nolan, when did you move to Silicon Valley?
Moved there in 1970, 69 actually.
And then how did Atari appear?
Oh, hold it. I'm mistaken. I moved there in 78 or 68. No.
Wow, 1968. While the craziness was going on with
absolutely.
the cultural revolution. Well, not only the countercultural revolution, but also the Summer of Love. You were there at the Summer of Love?
I was. And,
wow.
When I look back on it, we all had our hippie costumes. And we'd go up and be posers at Haight-Ashbury with our bell-bottom trousers and big blousey shirts and, tie-dyes and what have you. And we'd be hippies for the weekend.
Wait, but did the hippies like find you out because you were engineers? Do the hippies accept engineers?
Oh, yeah. Well, we were posers. We could pull it off.
Don't trust anybody over 30 too.
It's one of our themes.
Well, that was one of the things.
Stewart was born in 1980.
I actually believe that the hippie manifesto was very important to Atari because we created a different culture at Atari, and it was kind of given. We were the youngest company around. I was like 29 or 30, and all the other executives were under 30. And so we said, we need to have a different kind of company. And so we decided that we were going to be the perfect meritocracy. That merit was what mattered and not process. And so we probably were one of the few companies that were in manufacturing. We got rid of time clocks. We basically got rid of any kind of dress code. When I first moved to Silicon Valley, I wore a coat and tie to work every day because I was a professional as an engineer. And so we went from dress down Fridays to dress down any day, and focusing on outcomes. And
I got to say, Dad, that original Atari mission and values is relevant today. It seems like something that could have been authored in this decade.
It reminds me of the book No Rules, Rules. I'm having a moment here. I can't remember the guy who was CEO of Netflix, but and he wrote that at Netflix after having a horrible time running a company that had all kinds of process and rules. So he started Netflix and said, no expense reports, no timesheets, no process, like no rules. And it can't be like that anymore because they have like 10 or 12,000 employees. But they started with that idea that you have to trust your employees in order to get your employees to trust you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, we tried to have a very open environment where, that they kind of do that in Sweden. Like there's no secrets. Everybody knows what everybody else makes and what have you. And so secrecy, like I actually think that Apple is underperforming what it should be. Yeah, it's a really important company, but I think that in terms of, they've kind of built an iPhone, but boy, can you think of any innovation other than that? I mean, and that was 10 years ago, and everything else has just been evolutionary.
And this is a fun conversation, but they figured out how to build their own chips. Their whole architecture, their vertical integration is remarkable, and that is a direct result of having Tim Cook as CEO, because that was his background, was supply chain and figuring out how to build the whole thing from front to back. But you're right, having done that, like there's no input that leads them to think differently.
Yeah.
And so Steve Jobs. Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
So Steve Jobs ended up at Atari, didn't he? How did that happen?
It was actually, he started out. We gave him the first job he ever had, in picking apples in Washington, and this is another sort of keystone. You want to build a company where the creatives find you. And that's what he did. He came to Atari because we had a good reputation as being creative. And, we had this manifesto of work hard, play hard. And we'd have these wonderful beer busts on the back dock on Friday night if everybody had made quota. And it was really helpful. Because if we wanted to hire the best engineers around, they all wanted to work for Atari because of the parties we had.
That's totally true, right? That part of the whole Silicon Valley culture grew out of that. That, the important thing is how good are you and how hard do you work, not how hard do you play and, all the other issues that come up.
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at the bedrock of that, the whole idea of work hard, play hard, what does it really say? You want people who are intense, who are motivated, who are capable, who are driven. Some of the best hires I made were people who waited on me in a restaurant, and I could just see that sparkle, and I say, hey, come to work for me. I mean, I hired a waitress from I think it wasn't Applebee's, it was like Applebee's, that had waited on me. And I said, come work for me. And she became maybe the best accounts receivable manager I'd ever had.
Yeah.
And 19 years old, just smart as a whip and passionate.
Yeah.
Nolan, did you ever go to Agenda conference? Where did you and my dad start to interact? Do you remember the first time you guys ever met?
Well before.
Yeah, several. I mean, I can remember one particular one that I did. I think it was in San Diego.
That was the first one.
And something like that. And I remember it specifically because I was sick as a dog that night. I had the flu. But, the show must go on. So I probably gave one of the worst speeches I ever made because I was just feeling crappy.
Yeah. Well, it could go either way, but, anyway.
Do you remember that speech?
I don't remember the speech, I have to admit. But that's when we started the conference at the Laguna Niguel Resort. We did it there 3 years, and then we moved up to the Ritz-Carlton and then over to Phoenix. And the Laguna, I try to remember the name of the resort now, but it was reputed to be the mafia resort. But that's where the mafioso would go for vacation. And
that was the one that was right next to the military, the naval base,
north of La Jolla and south of the nuclear plant.
I remember I met Esther Dyson at that show.
You did?
In that hotel.
Yeah.
And I had not had any dealings with her before, and I just thought, what a really interesting, brilliant woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
She,
I kind of made a pass at her, and she said no. That she, of course, that was wrong because she's gay.
yeah. Not to mention that she was not a very personable person, but
Yeah,
great to have an intellectual conversation with, but not so much fun to hang out with.
exactly. Well, she also had a conference in
The PC Forum.
Arizona.
She took over
Yeah.
Ben Rosen's conference, and she
Yeah.
actually took over Ben Rosen's conference right when I started PC Letter. So we basically
Yeah.
became newsletter authors at the same time. And then the other was Dick Schaefer, who also started at the same time with his financial newsletter.
You know, Stuart, we've got way too many memories.
Well, we do. We're professionals at accumulating memories. The problem is to
Yeah,
keep creating memories, and so I'm gonna usurp you, younger Stuart, and say, so what is it that you're doing right now, Nolan, that's creating memories?
I've got two projects. One is Exodexa, which is I'm gamifying education, and in our testing, we're probably 2/3 of the way done. It's a SaaS model, and we're going to be able to teach 8th and 9th grades by playing a game, a series of games. And the nice thing about gamification is that you kind of build the learning and the testing into one. You remember about 10% of what you see, and but 80% of what you do. And so the games provide both context and doing. And so, you know, when you play our game, you're making a decision probably every 3 to 5 seconds, and that's what makes it really sticky.
And what's the second?
Pardon?
I have a problem with the term gamifying, partially because logically speaking, it's something you do to something else, as opposed to starting with the game dynamic itself. And you know, you're like a icon of games, video games, and video games are really interesting, and that's why I'm interested in what you're talking about, because video games have to get you started without telling you anything, right? You have to immediately decide you want to engage in it. No manual, you know, no setup, none of the stuff that, you know, business applications require. And so I'm interested that you're trying to do that to education, because at some level, your intended audience has to want to do it, not be told they have to do it. So I wonder about using the term gamify, because you have to make it a game.
Well, I can wax eloquent on this for way too long, but
the brief, yeah, the cheat sheet.
One of the ways that you make games addictive is you try to get the player into the flow state. And the flow state is, you know, it was kind of championed by a guy, a Hungarian named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like the girl with the curl. You just want it to be just hard enough and just easy enough. Hard enough that you have a difficulty, but easy enough that you can ultimately prevail. That's one step. The second step is you make things interesting either by challenging the player to get a better score with some nebulous reward attached to getting a good score, or through storytelling, engendering their curiosity. And so those are kind of the tools you're working with. And it turns out that what we have, our game is called The Last Explorer. And it's essentially a guy, an avatar, lands on a planet, has no background, no knowledge of what's going on. And his process of learning about that planet and moving into its indigeny and taking on problems. You know, one of the reasons that Minecraft became successful was kind of had a story. You kind of had to make a dugout for yourself in the beginning and all that. And so I think that we have achieved a very, very good outcome. In our beta tests, the kids who we've tested it with have all said, boy, you know, let us know when the next version comes out or when the next chapter, because we're, you know,
So story.
planet's not fully explored yet.
I see you guys got some heavyweights too, because the John Kraft and Kevin Caldwell are both have joined you. And John Kraft is was the CEO of Pandora,
Right.
And so that's pretty interesting. So you're gamifying education. What are you teaching people?
Everything, math, science,
It is. Okay.
you know, physics, and then we did this.
Wow, look at that.
And my CEO here, and she's a PhD in education. And if you notice, Tim Morton is also there, and he's basically was the lead designer on Fortnite.
Okay. That's pretty good. I'll talk about a never-ending story.
Yeah.
No, it's a little hard to tell whether Epic succeeded because of well, it's actually not because of Fortnite or because of
Well,
Unity.
you know, one of the things that I'm attracted to is that there are probably somewhere between 10 and 12 EdTech companies that have over $1 billion market cap.
Interesting.
And our tech is better than all of them. And so, and EdTech was amplified from the pandemic because the amount of homeschoolers increased by a factor of 5 after that, because parents all of a sudden were aware of how crappy our school systems were and take it. And so whenever you're talking about education, you say, okay, who's going to pay for it? And it turns out that getting it into a school, public school, is really hard.
Extremely.
With a few exceptions. Like we've got Leah Haynes, who part of the 2-Bit Circus Foundation,
Right.
you know, head of this 2-Bit Circus Foundation, as well as being my CEO here, has deep input into the Los Angeles school system. And they've said that they're willing to give it a go. And so we don't really have to make money off of the public schools, because the low-hanging fruit is actually homeschoolers. And the average homeschool parent spends $1,000 on resources per year. And so our $20 a month SaaS fee is
Gets into that. Yeah.
easy to go. So that's
Has homeschooling exploded during the pandemic? What's the state of homeschooling 5 years later?
5x.
Yeah.
5x. Interesting.
Before the pandemic, it's like 5%.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I remember. Yeah. And at some level, everybody became a homeschooler during the pandemic because they were stuck with their kids for at least 12 to 18 months and didn't have a choice. Right? They had to deal with it if they did.
And it's also worth noting, a lot of homeschoolers get through their material so much faster. They have so much extra time to do more stuff. There's so much time lost in the administration and the sort of friction of the school system.
So Brent, I'm sitting there looking at your kid and going, did you have kids during the pandemic?
Yep. Yeah,
You
I
had a
got two.
homeschool?
We're finally
everybody
now putting them
froze.
into actual schools, but it was we were 2 and they're 2 and 5 now, so
Right.
they were pretty young.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. Only one of them had been born.
But the fact
You
that
had
we
a
got
kid
3
during the
generations,
pandemic. That's a fascinating thing.
for my to have the pregnancy during right when lockdown happened was almost perfect. We weren't going to be hanging out with people during that period much anyways, so
Right.
it was actually kind of that time was really great.
Yeah, as long as you didn't have to go outside and talk to people.
Yeah.
So
So on the
yeah, go for it, Stuart. Bring us back.
So on the education front, so I would love to get into hardware because it's so educational for me right now. The fact that AI can basically tell me how to connect this with my Raspberry Pi was a mind-blowing moment 4 days ago, and I got Codex, which is a coding agent, on my command line terminal. To basically, I opened one on my Raspberry Pi. So I've got a coding agent on my Raspberry Pi, which is setting up all of the instructions, doing all the hardware stuff, but through the operating system of Linux. And then I had to get this connected to my computer via a USB, so it had power. And then
wait,
open up.
I'm just going to interrupt, Stuart. You have to know Stuart doesn't program.
I haven't programmed a single line. I have not programmed a single line at all so far.
He's vibe coding, right? He calls himself the AI whisperer, and he's vibe coding. So awesome. And now he's doing hardware, and this is a transition that I'm struggling with because I don't program and I'm not a hardware engineer, but I've kind of had to absorb enough of it. But getting into hardware, my fingers don't work well enough.
Well, the question I ask is, what is programming really?
Mm.
So what happens? Like when I'm doing something with an Arduino, I don't program it. I just go in and there's so many libraries that do almost what I want. And then all I have to do is sometimes go in and just change a register or an output pin, something like that.
Do you do that physically? In the code?
In the code. So like in an Arduino, there's certain inputs that are analog and some are digital and that sort of stuff. And so sometimes you have to say, I want this output into an analog form. And so, the analog form can be 16 bits, 16 levels, 4 bits, or 256 bits, or 256 levels, and things like that, which are very simple, but
to do what?
Well,
we're going to have to remember education center.
Brent, remember the time that we programmed the Christmas tree?
Oh yeah, and that was the early days of individually addressable LEDs. But we had some Christmas lights that we managed to hook up to the Connect. Hold on, sweetheart.
And the Connect, so that if you got close to it, they got brighter, and if you went to the right, they went green, and went to the left, they went red.
What year was this?
Oh shit!
2014.
See, yeah, it was a long time ago, but
well, 10 years isn't that long. But
you got to understand that Christmas at the Bushnell household is not quite normal.
I imagine that. Yeah. But I have to ask because we got a little off here. As you said, there were 2 things you're working on. One is the education.
The other one is I'm building a series of games for campgrounds. Turns out that we did a project, a friend of mine and I, before the pandemic, called Weird Woods. And we decided that we could enhance the revenue of a campground by a lot, RV parks and what have you. And we were in the market to buy a campground as our beta site.
Huh.
And then COVID came along,
and
the cost of campgrounds tripled, like in a week.
Yeah.
And so we just said, hey, we can't,
Wrong
there's
time.
no way we're going to be able to raise enough money and to make that difference. We actually had one campground under escrow
Wow.
that was,
I took a look at this deal as an investor.
what's that?
I thought this is like resonating with me. I got, I don't
No,
necessarily.
we may have pitched you on that.
Yeah,
But
so that might be the last time I saw Nolan, which was what, 2019. So
yeah. So what happened literally a month ago, the guy who I partnered with, and he'd gone on to some other things, got friends with a guy who owns a series of campgrounds. And he kind of talked him, and he's all jacked up and wants to do it. And he'll provide the campgrounds and some of the CapEx. And then we'll go into the old coin-op model of installing the tech on the campground and splitting the revenue 50-50. And it looks like
going back to the old school.
Yeah.
So you're going to go back to a sort of is it I imagine it's not an arcade game, but there's going to be some sort of hardware component.
Well, I'm using Brent's Dream Park. Do you know, Brent? Do you want
We
to talk
talked about it last time.
Oh, okay. So we're going to use Dream Park, and then I've got another guy who did a haunted mansion in VR, and I'm going to get Brent to program me up a maze. I just want a big maze. You should be able to code up in about a day. Brent, I haven't told you about this, but can your guys give me a maze, big maze in VR?
We've already built one.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but if I'm thinking correctly, that you're going to have to map that maze onto the weird woods next to the campground, right? That you have to know where the trees are, and
Well, we have a number of templates, Stewart, and so we have like different sizes. So if there's a parking lot or
These all have a space that we need, so we don't have to do that.
Have a configurable.
But one of the games we have is the QR code. A QR code treasure hunt, and so you basically wander. You start out, say, go northeast to 400 paces, and somewhere there is a QR code that once you see it, then you click on it, and it tells you now go climb the tree to the left of us, or what have you. So and that has to be programmed on location.
Yeah, because one of the things that I'm really focused on right now, and I don't know, Nolan, if you know about Meow Wolf, you probably do because you've been involved with 2-Bit, but I invested in Meow Wolf and been involved with it ever since. And we build these very intense physical places, and we're having a really hard time figuring out how to integrate the digital into it and then extend it beyond it and create an immersive experience that's not just in a space that you've created, but to have it feel like you can do it anywhere. And so that's why I'm asking, so what about the trees? It's like, you don't want people running into trees and hitting their heads. Like,
So the other thing we've got, Stewart, is with a mobile app that ties to the same world, you've got a whole series of objects you can then drop in the right places.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I wonder if I could get Meow Wolf to buy Dream Park. We finally get Meow Wolf. So Brent pitched me after I invested in Meow Wolf, which is one of the reasons I just said we can't do 2-Bit anyway. And Brent also pitched me before Meow Wolf, but that's a whole other story. And I'm trying to remember, you called it.
We're actually doing a fundraise on Exodexa that we'd love to have $5 million from you.
Well, I'd love to do that, but I have to raise the $5 million. We're still raising it.
Wait, tell Nolan and Brent the idea for the new fund.
Yep. So, Nolan, you're part of the thesis, basically, but my partner and I, Jim Ward, who worked at Lucasfilm and blah, blah, he came up with a thesis, which is we're investing in the third convergence of media. And if you recall, and I don't know if you were paying attention at the time, but the first convergence was defined by Nicholas Negroponte at the Media Lab. And he said the arrival of personal computers means it's going to transform all publishing and, it wasn't all the way to media, but even nonlinear editing was an outcome of the personal computer, so our thesis is, well, then there was a second convergence when the internet showed up and was fast enough to be functional, which led to social media and the cloud and all this kind of stuff. And so the third convergence, this is the fastest I've ever told this, but the third convergence is basis of AI, and now it's a merger between digital and reality, right? So now you can't always tell exactly what's real or not.
Right.
So there's going to be a whole new set of technologies that mess with us, and that's what we want to invest in. So actually, Stuart's precisely right. What you're doing with Exodexa is right in the spot. I just wish we had. We'd write you a check for $5 million, but
well,
reality disturbance. That's the best part of the thing, is that it's a reality disturbance, and it's I got interested in that pitch just for that word, essentially, just because I'm a bit of a psychonaut myself, and so the idea that you can do reality disturbance with various substances that were used in 1968 and all of those different places, but it's also just going to appear in our normal waking world, which is going to be very interesting, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, I remember that first one as the Negroponte flip, where he said everything that's wired will become wireless and everything that's wireless will become wired.
Okay, I think he did the atoms and bits thing, but there's atoms and there's bits.
Well, Negroponte is one of those guys who had a very, very good nose for the future in some ways. And I think when you look at the impact that the Media Lab has had on the world, it's probably one of the, it's kind of like Thebes or the Library of Alexandria. I mean, it was really, I think, a very, very important thing. And I think that we Americans don't realize the impact on the world of a few great ideas and idea people. I mean, stop to think about, for example, the Google guys, Steve Jobs and Apple, even Atari, how we've been able to create these ecosystems that essentially perform a tax on the world, so that all of a sudden the whole world is paying money into Silicon Valley.
It's a little bit of the value of bubbles, right? Getting everybody to be irrational with their money so that you create stuff that otherwise wouldn't be justified.
Absolutely. And we've been talking a lot about socialism. And one of the things that people don't realize is that the rich pays for the tooling of a consumer product, because the first items are always more expensive. And in order for them to get cheap, you have to buy a lot of them. Somebody does. And so that's where you don't want to say trickle down, because that's kind of a bad word politically, but
well, so this gets into my theory of what's going on with AI right now, is that, what you just said is basically like the Medicis. The Medicis used to basically fund everything. So they would fund the art, and they were allied with the popes, and they would do all of their games, and this is what Machiavelli was playing with. All these guys would essentially fund all the innovation. And so the idea that innovation was a middle class thing is much later. You probably got started right as it started to happen in 1968 to 1970s and the 1980s. But now with AI, the fact that I can just go and with no code and get this connected to my Raspberry Pi means that I'm now at that level of the Medicis, but I don't have any money like the Medicis, basically. But it's just the ideas. It's just the ideas that are essentially allowing me to now play and even get into art and other things like that as well.
Well, that's why a lot of the people really say that the world, the post or the AI world, will be the gig economy.
Mhm.
that instead of, in some ways, when you go to a company, you're a supplicant.
Mm.
Would you give me a job? That's the
Mm.
language of a supplicant.
Interesting.
And when you're an entrepreneur, you're powerful. That in
And that's
that
good.
case, that you're still a supplicant, but you're a supplicant to a customer.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. But that's the issue. The challenge that we're having going into the AI age is that not everybody is an entrepreneur, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs. I think.
What?
Yeah, go for
I
it. Go
challenge.
for it.
I challenge that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I think that anybody can be. You
Interesting.
don't have to use that language. I'll tell you a story. I was involved with a group that was dealing with prisoners, people who were in jail. And it was a 3-month program before they were released on parole and 3 months after they were there. And it was all about job skills.
Mhm.
And my job was to go in and talk about entrepreneurship. And how I did that is I went in and I said, you guys know that once you're out, you're going to need to get a job. And I said, but you're going to have this giant weight on your back because you're an ex-con. And so there are a whole series of jobs that you cannot get hired for. And I say, so what you really want to do is make your own job. And they all looked at me really curiously. And I said, okay, who wants to make $100,000 next year? Every hand raised up. I said, okay, why don't you become a dog walker? They looked at me like it was crazy. And I said, well, there's a dog walker in my neighborhood, and she charges $20 a dog. She always has at least 5 dogs because she uses the trails next to my house. And I said, if you do that, if you look through, she's probably making somewhere between $120,000 and $150,000 just walking dogs, because she does it probably 10 hours a day and 365 days a year. Probably takes off, probably has a friend that she shares the work with. And they said, huh. Okay. And then I said, let's look at eBay. I said, or Craigslist. What do you think about going and knocking on a door and saying, I will put all your junk on Craigslist and sell it, and I'll take 20% for doing that. I said, I know 3 or 4 people who are doing that for a living and are knocking down over 100,000.
So the question I have, Nolan, is did any of those ex-cons, or once they became ex-cons, go out there and start a company, start a business?
Yes, they did.
Oh, they did. Okay. So it worked.
It's interesting. Whenever you tell somebody like that, there's two things where you always get feedback. One is when you fire somebody and they do well. And somehow, a lot of people don't realize that people who get fired do it because they self-sabotage. Like they made a decision that they were going to do something when they were 19, and they're now 30, and they got a wife and a house and a kid and a dog. And so quitting is not possible, but they hate what they're doing. So if they screw up and get fired, oh, not my fault, honey.
Sorry.
And they go off and do it. And so I had an engineer that was a nice guy, but he was just not good. I fired him. A year later, he came back and he'd started a series of pet stores, was really knocking it out of the park. He just didn't like being an engineer. He was really good with animals. So
I love that. Yeah. I've been fired.
How do you teach?
I figured out I'm not a very good employee.
So it seems like when you get down to it, there's two different forms of business. There's two activities in business. One is selling it and one is building it. Both of those can then be sort of like gone into a lot of different pathways and stuff like that, but they all kind of roll up to either selling it or building it. How do you teach?
They're all about selling it. 100% about selling it.
Yep. Because without the sales, you can't do anything else. So how do you teach entrepreneurship? This is really good. And thank you for challenging me on it, because I'm down here in Argentina, and in Argentina, they're going through an economic crisis. And it's a huge degree because there's been a welfare state that is basically bankrupt, and they don't have the ability to print money like we do in the United States. And so there's a whole bunch of people who need to be reskilled. And AI is very, very good at reskilling people. And so there's this really interesting opportunity I see down here. And I really like what you said about teaching people how to be entrepreneurs, because we are teaching people how to do all the stuff that I showed you with the ESP and coding apps and building all these different things. We're teaching them how to use AI to do all those things. And this skill, so far, we've just been focusing on building it, but I think it will be really fun to start teaching people how to sell things as well, which is a very interesting place.
I got a great thing for you. It's called the one-page sell sheet. and every project,
cool.
Brent's laughing at me because
yeah, I love this. Yeah.
And the one-page sell sheet should be the start of every project. And because a lot of times people start with an idea, but they don't really track it through the process of getting it sold. So here's how you design a one-page sell sheet. The first page, the front, you can't use anything smaller than 20-point type. Second, it has to describe exactly what it is succinctly, and you can only use 7 words.
That's great.
Okay. Third, it has to have a price. Okay. Now, the real goal of the front page is to get them to turn it over and read the details. And that's where the things that come out, and the rule is that it can't do more than 3 things.
The second sheet, the other side of the paper, or the thing that you're selling?
Either. That's right. Because what happens is complexity kills every project. And everybody loves to hang one more ornament onto the Christmas tree. and the weight of that brings down the whole project.
The whole tree.
And the other thing you have to think about is, what pathway do you want to take that is the minimum between now and first cash?
Okay, Stewart, if I can, I'm going to bring this to a close by asking Brent, what question did we not ask your father that we should have?
What? What question? I think, Dad, it's been really fun now having kids myself. Your frameworks for parenting, I think the sort of your approaches. He really did a lot of neat things surrounding us with tools and materials, and regular. I've been reading just on Instagram parenting things around, traditions, and sort of how much, it's so much less the big trip to Disneyland than it is pancakes every single Saturday, and Dad would take us to ramen, Ringer Hut. This was before ramen was cool. We'd go to Ringer Hut and Fry's Electronics. And we do that every Sunday. And, I really remember that. And so I think, more on your parenting approaches to that. I think it's,
I had, my partner in Alsop, Louis, sold his company to Mattel, and he said it was like, and he was called the chief creative officer at Mattel, and he said it was like being Tom Hanks, and I'm trying to remember the name of the movie where
Big.
you got it,
Big.
Exactly. It's like he got to sit around and go, "Oh, this sucks. Oh, but this is fun."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brent and I we went to Tokyo for, it was a great trip, all for the wrong reasons.
we went for the World Expo, got there and realized it was so overrun with people. We were like, well, we don't want to go there. So
but each of the boys, the kids, I shouldn't say the boys, when they turned 14, got to go to Asia with me, either China or Japan. And so Brent and I had a lot of reminiscing of our first trip together in Japan.
You must have gone to Akihabara.
Oh, yeah.
Well, after deciding the World Expo was too busy, go to Akihabara and go through
all sorts of cool stuff. Well, and those trips, was interesting because he, for all the rest of the years, it was like, well, I'm not going to be able to take you to Asia if you're not an adventurous eater, if you're not trying weird food, And so it was this ginormous lever that he could wield, for a decade.
This is fascinating because I'm taking my grandson, who is about to turn 16, to Japan next June. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell do you do with a 16-year-old in Tokyo and Japan.
I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Tokyo Mystery Circus. That was one of the highlights for Dad. The Tokyo Mystery Circus.
And Yuki Toriyama.
Oh yeah, Yukai Toriyama is this restaurant outside of the city that it's like you've gone back in time 300 years.
Say that again.
Yukai Toriyama, UKAI, and then Toriyama, TORYAMA. And it's magical, Stewart. You'll take the train out of town. The restaurant itself, you're sitting on tatami mats, and it's in a beautiful little, crafted environment. It's spectacular.
I'll follow up with you on it.
What was the one we did? We were in the water and the thing.
Oh, yeah. Team Lab. That's another one.
I've already got tickets for Team Lab. So.
Are you doing Planets or Borderless? There's two different ones.
No, I'm going to both.
You're going to both. Okay, great.
And the Ghibli Museum, all this stuff about Sora. The first thing they started doing was doing Ghibli versions of all of us.
So did you get the tickets for that already? We wanted to go to that.
It's 9 months from now, so I think I could probably.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, well, make sure you get your tickets early.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. What about the escape that puzzle thing that we did?
That was the Mystery Circus.
That's the Mystery Circus. Okay, I already got that one. Yeah. Okay, this is great. I'll be back to you guys to get recommendations.
Good timing. Yeah, please.
I have to go, so I'll have to bring this to a close. But
so fun.
Stuart.
I maintain that the most important thing that you can do as you age is to stay childlike.
Yeah, have fun. Yes, absolutely.
Just everyone listening and do that. Thank you, guys.
This was so fun.
Yeah, this is great.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
But stay on.
Off. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, guy.